Jack Harper wasn't the sort of man who expected his life to veer into the bizarre. The universe was predictable, a set of rules he'd grown up with, and by now, mastered. If you worked hard enough, you paid your dues, got a decent job, and avoided drama. That was how life worked. Well, at least it had been. Today, though, something felt different, but Jack couldn't put his finger on it. He sat on the couch, coffee cup in hand, staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen. The latest software update was due to drop, and as usual, his boss expected a breakthrough feature by the end of the week. Jack's fingers hovered over the keys. Breakthrough. He couldn't even get his code to compile without it throwing an error. Maybe he'd just pretend to get some work done until the caffeine kicked in. The soft knock on his door startled him. Who knocks on doors anymore? Jack muttered, wondering if it was a delivery, but no one he knew actually knocked. He'd been getting a lot of spam lately, phones ringing off the hook, doorbell cameras flashing every time some overzealous salesperson decided they needed to convince him to buy a timeshare or a set of knives that could cut through space-time, or so they claimed. With a sigh, he sloshed his coffee around in its cup, wiped the sleep from his eyes, and trudged toward the door. As he opened it, a woman stood before him. She was tall, at least 6 feet, maybe a little more, wearing a flowing, iridescent outfit that shimmered with an ethereal glow. Her hair, impossibly smooth, cascaded down in waves that seemed to catch the light in a way no human hair should. She had eyes like the deep, dark sky after the stars come out. Dark and deep, with a softness that made him feel like he was falling into something both familiar and completely alien. She looked, well, not exactly human. "Hi?" Jack said, blinking rapidly, his hand still on the door. "Can I help you?" "Are you Jack Harper?" she asked, her voice musical and smooth, but with a confident edge that suggested she wasn't used to hearing no. Yeah, that's me," Jack said, his heart picking up pace. "Is there a problem?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him with a gaze that felt like it was peeling back layers of his life. It made him uncomfortable, like she knew all his secrets. Was she reading my browser history? He instinctively shifted his weight. Maybe she was one of those people who just knew things. A psychic, perhaps? Not that Jack believed in that sort of thing, but... "You promised," she said. He blinked. "What?" "I'm sorry?" he asked, trying to process her words. "You promised me," she repeated, this time her tone more certain, less like a question and more like a statement of fact. "Okay, listen, I have no idea what this is about, but if you're selling something or trying to get me to sign up for a cult—" "I'm not trying to sell you anything," she interrupted, a small, amused smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'm here to remind you of your promise, Jack." "Right, okay," Jack said, rubbing his eyes. "Look, I'm not sure if you're one of those social media influencers or—" "I'm not an influencer," she cut him off again, though her smile remained. "And I'm not selling anything. My name is Zara. I'm here because, years ago, you promised me that you would marry me." Jack froze, the coffee cup slipping from his hand and splashing across the floor. He stared at her, a few beats of silence stretching out between them. For a moment, he considered the possibility that this was a prank, one of those elaborate YouTube setups where they hire actors to trick unsuspecting people. The problem with that theory was that Zara wasn't acting. She was too real. "Look," he said, clearing his throat, "I'm flattered you know my name, but I'm pretty sure I've never promised to marry anyone, especially not someone who's, He gestured awkwardly to her outfit and glowing presence. "From space?" Zara's smile didn't waver. "Not space exactly." Lanthea Jack's brain did a quick recalculation. Lanthea. Sounds like a vacation spot, if you were into intergalactic tourism. "Lanthea, right. And what? You're here for a vacation or—" "No. I'm here to remind you of the promise," she said again, her tone firm now, as if she were speaking to a child who just wasn't getting it. "You promised to marry me. I've traveled through space to remind you, Jack." Jack was about to dismiss her again when something in her gaze stopped him. She wasn't joking, and she wasn't making this up. Oh God, is this some sort of weird dating scam, he thought? But Zara's expression was too sincere, her eyes too unblinking, for him to dismiss her entirely. Okay, he said, holding up both hands in surrender. Let's just pretend for a second that I've made a promise to marry you, some mysterious alien woman I don't remember. What do you want me to do about it? Can I just call this a misunderstanding and move on? Zara's eyes glowed a little brighter, and her smile deepened, as though she'd been waiting for him to ask the question. I've come to take you with me, Jack. We're going back to Lanthea. You will fulfill your promise. Jack blinked. This is not happening. No way, he said, chuckling nervously. I don't know what kind of weird role-play you're into, but I don't even know you. We've never met. You made the promise, Zara said, her tone more serious now. And I've been waiting, Jack. I've waited for years. I've been tracking you, watching you, and now I'm here to remind you. Jack took a deep breath, trying to process the absurdity of what was happening. This is insane, he muttered to himself. How do I get out of this without insulting her? Zara crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. You'll get used to it. It's not every day a man gets to marry an alien princess. It's kind of an honor, really. Jack blinked, eyes narrowing as he studied her. Princess? Her smile returned, warm and understanding. Yes, princess. But that's not important right now. What's important is you're coming with me, Jack. Jack stood frozen in place, trying to decide whether this was a dream, a prank, or the beginning of a nightmare. One thing was for sure. This wasn't how he'd expected his morning to go. Not in the slightest. You know what? He finally said, raising an eyebrow. I think I need some coffee first. Zara's smile deepened, as if she had been expecting this. Take your time, she said, her voice as calm as the stars outside his window. But remember, Jack, I'll be waiting. And as she stepped into his apartment, Jack realized there was no escape. Not today. Not ever. Jack didn't know what to expect when he invited a shimmering alien princess into his apartment, but it sure wasn't this. Zara glided into the living room, her metallic outfit reflecting the dim early morning light like a walking constellation. Jack, still clutching his half-finished coffee, stared after her. Princess. He couldn't even get his head around that part. The absurdity of the situation almost made him forget that, he was about to be married to an alien princess on another planet. So, what's the plan here? Jack asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. Do we get on a spaceship? Am I supposed to say goodbye to Earth? Maybe send a postcard from the stars? Zara had already taken a seat on his couch, legs crossed gracefully, as if she were used to making herself at home in the most unexpected places. She looked over at him, her dark eyes unwavering. There's no need to send a postcard, Jack. The journey is somewhat immediate. Jack frowned, suddenly feeling out of his depth. Immediate? As in, like, right now? Precisely, she replied, not a hint of humor in her voice. It was clear to him now, Zara wasn't here to joke around. She had something, some cosmic, otherworldly agenda, and it didn't involve any kind of time for Jack to sit and process the absurdity of it all. But then, Zara's gaze softened, and a smile tugged at her lips. But I suppose we could take a moment to ease into it. After all, you've forgotten, and that is something we'll need to fix. Jack blinked. Forgotten? What are you talking about? I definitely haven't forgotten anything about marrying an alien princess. Zara tilted her head, considering him. I understand it's a bit of a shock, Jack. You see, you made a promise to me many years ago, before I even landed here on Earth. It was an offhand promise, but you made it nonetheless. A vow to marry me when the time was right. Jack rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Wait a minute. You're telling me that years ago I, Jack Harper, Me, the guy who can't even remember where he put his keys, promised to marry an alien princess? Zara nodded, unfazed by his sarcasm. Yes, but before you dismiss the idea entirely, allow me to clarify. When I first came to Earth, I was part of an intergalactic research mission. I observed your planet, studying your culture and your people. One day, we met, very briefly, and in that moment you swore to me that when the time came you would marry me. It was a simple, innocent promise. Jack felt his stomach drop. He looked at Zara as if she were talking about a past life, one he didn't even recognize. I don't even remember meeting you, or making this promise. She raised an eyebrow. I know. That's the problem. Wait. Jack scratched his head. So what? You've been waiting for me to remember this promise? All these years? Correct, Zara said, her voice suddenly softening, her tone almost apologetic. It's not that I wanted to trap you. I simply waited. I monitored Earth, waiting for the day you would realize your vow. But you, well, you've been rather distracted. Jack looked at her incredulously. Distracted? I've been living in a one-bedroom apartment with zero motivation to do anything except finish my code and hope no one notices my complete lack of social skills. If you were tracking me, you'd know that. Zara smiled, but there was a flicker of something deep in her gaze, a sadness maybe. I did. I watched your life unfold, Jack. I saw your struggles, your failures, and your small victories. And I waited thinking one day you would remember me, remember the promise. Jack rubbed his face. Okay, so I might have made a promise to you a while ago. Fine. But you didn't think to just remind me about it earlier? You couldn't send a letter or something? Zara's lips curled into a small wry smile. I did try, in a way. I monitored your communications, your social media, your digital footprint. Jack's eyes widened. Wait, you were stalking me through social media, my Facebook posts, my Twitter rants. Zara's smile broadened, and for the first time, Jack noticed the humor in her eyes. You'd be surprised how easy it is to find you, Jack. You have a rather distinctive online presence. I found your "What's the point of life" post, followed by your "I need coffee" meme, and thought, yes, that's the man I made a promise to. Jack couldn't help it. He burst out laughing. You've been waiting all this time, watching me post cat memes and passive-aggressive comments about the state of the world? That's somehow the most tragic thing I've ever heard. Zara's expression softened, but there was no judgment in her gaze. It's not tragic, Jack. It's human. I understand, but your promise still stands. And that's why I'm here. Jack stopped laughing, the gravity of her words sinking in once more. So what now? I'm just supposed to drop everything and go with you to Lanthea? Zara nodded. Yes. There's no real time to waste. The bond we share is rare, and we must honor it before the universe shifts in ways that we can't control. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was in a dream. This had to be some kind of elaborate prank, right? A trick that would end when the cameras came out and everyone jumped out from behind the curtains, laughing at how well they'd fooled him. But Zara's expression was too earnest, her eyes too calm. I don't get it, Jack muttered, his head spinning. I'm just some guy who forgot about a promise. Why do I have to fix it? Why me? Zara's eyes softened, and for a moment Jack saw something in her, a flicker of vulnerability. Because, Jack, some promises are more than just words. They create ripples in the fabric of space. A promise made in good faith cannot be ignored. It creates a bond, and I have come to collect what you owe me. Jack stood there looking at her, feeling a strange pull. Collect what I owe you? He thought, almost amused at the concept. But then, as the absurdity began to fade, he realized something. Zara wasn't just some intergalactic tourist with a weird obsession. She was here, in his apartment, sitting on his couch, talking about promises and bonds, and space. "Well, all right then," Jack said, his voice more subdued than before. "I guess I'll need to pack." Zara stood up. "There's no need to pack. You'll have everything you need when we get to Lanthea." Jack hesitated, then glanced at his laptop. "But I still have work. A deadline's coming up. I can't just leave in the middle of a project." "Your work will wait," Zara interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. "Your promise is more important. This isn't just about us, Jack. This is about something bigger, something beyond the codes and the deadlines. Your future." "Our future," Jack took a long, deep breath. "This is insane. But it's happening. It's real." "So, Lanthea, huh?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Got a good Wi-Fi connection there?" Zara smiled again. "Not exactly, but there's something much more valuable than Wi-Fi on Lanthea, Jack. Something I think you'll appreciate." Jack couldn't help but grin. "Well, if it's not Wi-Fi, it better be pizza." Jack had always considered himself a man of simple tastes: a good cup of coffee, a comfortable chair, a few hours of peace before the chaos of the world outside intruded. A life of predictable routines, no surprises. That was his version of heaven. Well, that and pizza, he could live off pizza forever. But this was different. Not just different in a, "I'll be telling my grandkids about this" kind of way. This was different in the sense that the universe had just thrown out the rule book and was now handing him a crash course in intergalactic diplomacy, wedding vows, and alien princesses. "You're not packing?" Zara asked, her voice tinged with genuine curiosity. She stood at the doorway of Jack's living room, arms crossed, watching him as he sat on the couch with a dazed expression, his mind still attempting to catch up with reality. She looked perfectly at ease, like she had a whole suitcase packed for the both of them. In fact, Zara looked more prepared for a wedding than Jack had ever been in his life. I don't even know what to pack for an alien planet," Jack muttered, rubbing his eyes as he surveyed the small apartment he'd spent the last few years of his life inhabiting. He'd never thought of his home as anything spectacular, but now it seemed absurdly normal. Too normal. As though he was saying goodbye to something that wasn't just a living space, but the entire scope of his reality. Zara tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning his apartment with a look of quiet amusement. "You'll need nothing from here. You'll adjust when we arrive." Jack's eyebrows furrowed. "Adjust to what? Lanthea? Where is this place exactly? Are we talking a tropical paradise with beaches and resorts, or a dusty wasteland where my only companions are scorpions?" Zara's lips quirked upward, into the faintest of smiles. "Lanthea is a bit of both. We have vast cities of shining spires, filled with knowledge and advanced technology, but also great stretches of wilderness. The landscape varies, and as for the company, there will be a few people waiting for you." She spoke as though he should be excited about the idea of meeting alien people. Jack, on the other hand, had just enough trouble dealing with people on Earth. "Great people. I've been a bit out of practice lately," Jack deadpanned. "I'm pretty sure I'm still in the awkward small talk phase of my existence. Should I brush up on intergalactic etiquette before meeting your royal family?" Zara laughed, the sound light and melodic, making the tension in the room momentarily fade. "You need not worry. It's been a long time since I've interacted with anyone from Earth, and the humans I have met, well, let's just say we tend to be more direct with each other." That made Jack pause. Direct? Are we talking honest to God, no beating around the bush directness, or, "Oh, I'll tell you, you look great," but then secretly plot your demise direct? Zara raised an eyebrow, her expression turning serious for a moment. "Honesty. There's no time for pretenses. On Lanthea, when we form bonds, they're meant to be strong, unshakable." Jack squinted at her. "You're talking about our bond, right? The one that involves me remembering a wedding promise I clearly don't recall making? 'Cause that bond sounds like it was formed on a solid foundation of vague recollections and half-remembered drunken conversations." Zara's lips twitched in something like amusement. It was made in earnest, Jack, but I understand your reluctance. It's not easy what I'm asking of you. Jack had to stop and take a breath. Yeah, not exactly. I mean, I'm pretty sure this isn't what I was planning for my life at the moment. You're asking me to marry you, and it's kind of hard to wrap my head around. No offense, but this is a lot to take in. Zara's smile softened, and for a moment, her eyes seemed to hold a depth of understanding. I know. I didn't expect you to accept this easily. I've been patient, Jack. I can wait as long as it takes. I'm here because you need time to remember, but I also know the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes. Jack's mind raced. He looked down at his hands, then back at Zara. You're really sure about this? Zara's expression shifted, no longer teasing but a little more earnest. I wouldn't have come all this way if I wasn't. Jack let out a long breath. What was he supposed to say to that? Sure, I'll just drop everything, go to an alien planet and marry someone I barely know. He was a guy who'd never even been on a proper date. Now he was expected to wed a princess from another world? But something about the way Zara spoke made him hesitate. He was used to uncertainty in his life, but the certainty in her eyes made him feel like he might just be walking into something far bigger than he could understand. So what happens now? Jack asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Zara stepped closer, her tone growing quieter, almost intimate. Now, Jack, we leave. The journey will be long, but not in the way you think. It won't be a simple trip across space. We'll travel using the Seraphis, a method of instantaneous transport. It's difficult to explain to one who's never encountered it before, but think of it as a kind of folding of space-time. Jack blinked, genuinely confused. Wait, so you're saying we're going to fold space like origami? Zara chuckled softly, a smile playing at her lips. In a way, yes. The Seraphis technology allows us to bend space so that we can move from one point to another almost instantly. It's not like the transport ships you see in human science fiction. It's far more sophisticated. So, I won't even have time to get airsick? Jack joked, though his stomach was already starting to feel like it was doing flips. No time for sickness, Zara replied with a grin. You'll barely have time to blink. Jack gulped. Okay, sure, instant travel, no air sickness, and no packing. Got it. He stood up, moving toward the window and gazing out at the city skyline, still trying to reconcile the surreal situation he found himself in. What had happened to the Jack Harper who was content with his quiet, uncomplicated life? Was he really about to become part of some cosmic destiny? What did that even mean? Zara approached him, standing beside him now, her presence oddly calming. Are you ready? She asked softly. Jack took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what he was ready for, but something deep inside him knew he had to take this step. There was no turning back. He glanced at Zara, his heart hammering in his chest. Yeah, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Let's do this. Zara's eyes softened. Then, Jack, welcome to Lanthea. With a gentle touch, she placed her hand on his arm, and the world around him seemed to fold. The air shimmered with a subtle hum, and in the blink of an eye, Jack found himself somewhere entirely different. It wasn't a dusty wasteland, but it wasn't quite the resort he'd been hoping for either. The skies above them were a deep shade of purple, the clouds swirling in strange formations as a city of glittering towers loomed in the distance. It was beautiful, but also strange, alien. He glanced over at Zara. Okay, now I'm starting to get why you don't need a Wi-Fi connection here. Zara's smile was all-knowing. This place is far more connected than you realize, Jack. As the strange city of Lanthea loomed before them, Jack realized that his life was about to change forever, and that it might not be as simple as a wedding promise after all. Jack was fairly certain he had seen some of the most impressive views on Earth, mountains at sunrise, skyscrapers gleaming in the late afternoon sun, even the dense sprawl of New York City at night. But the view in front of him was something entirely different. Lanthea. He blinked a few times, trying to process it. It wasn't just a city, it was an impossibility, a sprawling metropolis suspended in a cascade of floating platforms. The buildings soared impossibly high, their architecture sleek and sharp, with translucent structures that shimmered like liquid glass. The entire city seemed to pulse with life and energy, as if the air itself was breathing. "Okay, so this is your hometown?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with awe. "I mean, no offense, but your real estate prices are probably off the charts." Zara stood beside him, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the city. She didn't seem fazed in the least, which only made Jack feel more like he had walked into a sci-fi movie he was woefully unprepared for. "This is Lanthea," Zara replied simply, as though that one sentence explained everything. She turned to face Jack with a smile that bordered on mysterious. "It's not exactly home to me anymore, but it is where the promise began." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, right, that promise. Of course. We're just going to casually brush over the fact that I have no idea why I promised to marry you, and you're totally cool with this?" Zara's lips quirked upward in a slight grin. "I'm more patient than I appear, Jack. Besides, I'm sure you'll remember everything in time." Jack sighed. He really didn't know how he was supposed to respond to that. He had so many questions about the city, about Zara's culture, and most importantly, about why on Earth, or in this case, off Earth, he had promised to marry her. But it all felt so overwhelming that he was starting to wonder if he'd get any answers at all. "All right, so what happens now? Do I need to wear a tux? Do I even own a tux? And is there some kind of Lanthean wedding dress code that involves shiny armor or space helmets?" Zara laughed lightly, and this time the sound was genuine. "There's no need for a tux, or a wedding dress for that matter. We'll begin with an introduction to the council. They'll want to meet you first." "The council?" "Of course there's a council." Jack nodded slowly, rubbing his temples. "Well, at least I won't be standing up in front of a bunch of aliens in a sweaty t-shirt and boxers, right?" Zara's expression softened. "Don't worry, Jack, the council doesn't judge based on clothing. They understand the circumstances." Jack turned to look at her, one eyebrow raised. "The circumstances? You mean the fact that I've just been plucked from my normal life to suddenly be part of this intergalactic arranged marriage situation?" Zara gave him a sly smile. "I wouldn't say arranged. It's more like destiny." Jack stared at her. "Destiny? Okay, well, I think I need a drink." "Fortunately," Zara said with a gleam in her eye, "there's a place for that." Without further ado, she led Jack across a shimmering bridge, one that seemed to defy the laws of physics, floating several hundred feet above the ground. The platforms beneath their feet barely made a sound as they walked, and the air was strangely warm, but tinged with the scent of ozone, like the aftermath of a thunderstorm. The city around them was alive with movement, though the people they passed seemed utterly nonchalant, going about their business in a city where gravity, apparently, didn't apply in the traditional sense. "Okay, I've got to ask," Jack said, trying to distract himself from the dizzying feeling of walking across a bridge with no visible support. "How does this whole place work? Is gravity optional here?" Zara chuckled. "Not optional. Lanthea uses a combination of graviton generators and advanced anti-gravity technology to maintain stability. It's a balance of forces that creates the feeling of weightlessness, but still holds everything together." "Of course," Jack muttered, feeling like he was about to drift off into the ether. "Advanced anti-gravity technology. Totally normal." She led him into a building that looked more like a floating crystal than anything resembling a typical structure. Inside, the walls pulsed with soft, iridescent light, and the air was thick with the scent of alien spices. Jack could only assume it was the equivalent of some sort of diplomatic center, where world-changing decisions were made, or in his case, where he was about to make a decision that would likely change his life forever. A tall, thin man dressed in an elaborate flowing robe approached them with a serene expression. He looked like someone who had never been caught off guard in his entire life. His hair, which was a deep shade of violet, flowed down past his shoulders in perfect waves. "Zara," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. "It is good to see you again. And you must be Jack, the human. Welcome to Lanthea." Jack shook the man's hand reflexively, unsure of the proper greeting protocol. Yeah, hi. I didn't expect to be shaking hands with, whatever you are." The man's smile remained gentle, though his eyes sparkled with curiosity. "I am Callan, one of the council members. We have heard much about you, Jack, though your arrival is unconventional." Jack laughed nervously. "Unconventional doesn't even begin to cover it." Callan raised an eyebrow. "I believe you are here to complete a promise made long ago." Jack froze. You know about that?" Zara stepped forward, nodding. "The council has been monitoring your progress, Jack. We are not unaware of the challenges you face in remembering your vow, but we trust that you will fulfill your part in this bond." Jack glanced at Zara, then back at Callan. "I didn't even know this was a thing. I'm just a guy. I'm not a prince. I'm not a hero. I'm just me." Callan's expression softened, and he stepped closer. "That is what makes this promise so remarkable. You are not here because you are special, Jack. You are here because you chose to be." Zara placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "The promise, Jack, it is not just about me. It is about what you are capable of, and what the universe needs from you." Jack swallowed. It felt like the weight of the galaxy was pressing down on him now, and no matter how much he tried to brush it off with jokes, the reality of it was starting to sink in. "We don't ask for much," Callan continued, his tone still gentle but firm. "Only that you understand the importance of what you have been chosen for. Lanthea, and all the worlds in our system, are at a crossroads. The future depends on this bond." Jack stared at Callan, then back at Zara. "I'm still not sure I understand any of this." Zara gave him a reassuring smile. "That's okay. No one expects you to understand it all at once. But you will, Jack. In time." For the first time since his arrival, Jack felt a strange flicker of something, uncertainty mixed with a spark of hope. It wasn't all clear yet. It wasn't even close. But something was beginning to take shape, and maybe, just maybe, that promise wasn't as absurd as it seemed. "All right," Jack said, taking a deep breath. I guess I'll try to get with the program. Let's see what happens next." Callan nodded. "The council awaits." And so, Jack followed Zara into the heart of Lanthea, a place he still wasn't entirely sure was real. But as the doors slid open, he knew one thing for certain. He was about to find out. The council's chamber was not what Jack had expected. He had been imagining something grand, maybe with a few long ancient tables and dark, imposing figures that would stare down at him from high, unreachable thrones. But as Zara guided him through the tall glass doors, he found himself stepping into a space that was less like a council chamber and more like an art gallery. If that art gallery had been designed by aliens who considered minimalism their highest form of expression, the walls were soft hues of blue and green, almost liquid in their sheen. Patterns of geometric shapes slowly morphed across the surfaces, as though the walls themselves were breathing, alive with intent. It was almost disorienting to look at them for too long, like staring at an optical illusion. "So, Jack muttered, squinting at the constantly shifting patterns on the walls. What do you do if you get motion sickness in here?" Zara, who had remained calm throughout the journey, gave him a sidelong glance. "The patterns are harmless, Jack. They adjust according to the emotional tone of the room. They change depending on how the discussion is going." "Great," Jack said. "So if I start feeling nauseous, we'll know things are really going well." Zara smiled, but said nothing, leading him deeper into the room. The chairs, which were arranged in a circle, seemed to float just above the ground, suspended by some invisible force. Jack was half expecting them to move on their own, but they stayed still, almost inviting him to take a seat. The entire room, Jack noted, was eerily silent except for the soft hum of energy running beneath the floor. As he moved to sit in one of the chairs, He felt the floor shift beneath him, a subtle hum that almost seemed to purr with energy. It didn't feel uncomfortable, just different. There were other figures seated in the circle. Jack had been warned that the council was not a small group, but the sight of them still made him pause. There were 6 individuals in total, each one distinctly alien in appearance, but none of them in the tentacle monster or bug-eyed vein that Earth sci-fi movies seem to enjoy depicting. One woman, her skin a luminous shade of silver, raised her eyes from a small floating device in front of her. She smiled faintly as Jack sat down, her large iridescent eyes flicking over him. "Jack, it is a pleasure to finally meet you," she said, her voice melodic but strangely mechanical, like a soft whisper over a radio transmission. Jack managed a weak smile. "Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be quite so popular today." Another council member, a being who looked like a cross between a bird and a jellyfish, tilted its head curiously. "Your sense of humor is interesting. We were expecting you to be more stoic." "Yeah, well," Jack said, "I'm a man of many surprises. It's part of my charm." Zara gave him a sideways glance, but she didn't comment. Instead, she took a seat beside him. The other council members regarded him with an air of quiet curiosity, their expressions unreadable. Jack tried not to let the stares unnerve him, but it wasn't easy. His mind was still whirling from the fact that he was sitting in front of an actual functioning alien government. If his childhood self could see him now, he'd probably be freaking out. "Let's begin," said the silver-skinned woman, her eyes still glowing faintly. "We are here to discuss the matter of your commitment to Zara, Jack." That was a loaded sentence, if Jack had ever heard one. He was about to speak up when the council member, a tall crystalline figure, interjected in a voice that was as smooth and cold as glass. "You were chosen, Jack. The promise you made to Zara is not one that can be dismissed lightly. It carries consequences, not only for you, but for the future of our world. You must understand this." Jack blinked, trying to wrap his head around the weight of what was being said. Okay, slow down there. I'm just a guy who made a promise years ago, apparently, when I didn't know what I was getting into. I don't even remember half of what happened." One of the council members, a tall, wiry being whose skin glowed with a soft golden hue, chimed in, her voice soothing but firm. "The promise is not about your memory, Jack. It is about your choice. You chose to make it regardless of the circumstances at the time. It is a bond that stretches beyond your understanding, but its importance remains." Jack frowned. "I'm still trying to get my head around this whole alien marriage thing. I mean, you can't just... Why did you make the promise, Jack?" Zara's voice cut through his thoughts, calm and patient. "That is the question." The words hung in the air for a moment, and for the first time since he had arrived on Lanthea, Jack paused. He looked at Zara, her gaze unwavering. Something about the way she said it made him feel as though the entire room was waiting for him to answer, waiting for something that had been lost in time to be remembered. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he said finally, feeling frustrated. "Maybe it was because... I don't know. I was young, I guess. I made a lot of promises back then. I probably thought it was just a joke, or something." Zara's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened. "It was not a joke, Jack." One of the council members, the crystalline one, spoke up again. "You may not remember, but the promise was a significant moment, Jack. It was tied to the future of our worlds. You, who have been chosen, are not merely the subject of a personal vow. Your bond with Zara is part of a greater destiny, one that links the fate of many across space." Jack blinked, his pulse quickening. Wait, I'm just a guy. A regular guy. You're telling me that my promise is going to affect the entire galaxy?" The silver-skinned woman smiled gently, but her eyes were serious. "Yes, Jack. This is the gravity of your situation. The choice you made, even if unconsciously, is tied to the future of Lanthea. And now, it is time to fulfill it." There it was again. the weight of it all, pressing down on his chest. He had thought it would be simple. He thought they'd show him the sights, maybe have a ceremony, and that would be it. But now, it was starting to feel like something far more profound, like he was standing at the edge of a precipice and didn't know what lay beyond it. Zara placed a hand gently on his arm, grounding him in the moment. "Jack, we can do this. You can do this. The promise is not a burden. It's a chance to change the future, and I believe you can." Jack opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The silence in the room pressed in around him, suffocating yet oddly comforting. It was like they were all waiting for him to make a choice, and the weight of that choice had never been clearer. Finally, Jack exhaled. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure I'm the hero you think I am. I'm just a guy who promised to marry someone he doesn't even remember." Zara smiled softly, her eyes shining with something like understanding. "You're more than that, Jack. You'll see. In time." And for the first time since arriving on Lanthea, Jack had the faintest inkling that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand what that promise really meant. The next few days were a blur of meetings, discussions, and, as Jack had come to realize, his deepening confusion. Every time he thought he was starting to understand the weight of his promise, Zara would drop a new piece of information on him, leaving him even more unsure of what to think. Lanthea itself was a city unlike anything he had ever seen, constantly shifting and evolving, its buildings and structures seeming to adjust themselves based on the emotional climate of its people. One moment, a street would be a bustling market filled with strange and beautiful creatures selling exotic wares, and the next, it would transform into a quiet park with floating orbs of light illuminating the paths. Even the air felt alive, humming with an energy Jack could feel down to his bones. But it wasn't the city itself that was the problem. It was the people, more specifically the council, who seemed determined to remind Jack at every opportunity that he had a role to play in something much bigger than himself. Today, though, was different. Today, they were sending him into the arena of understanding. "Yes," Zara said, with a smile that was somewhere between encouraging and mischievous. "I know it sounds like something out of a gladiator movie, but trust me, it's not as dangerous as it sounds." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Arena of understanding? Are there going to be like giant beasts or deadly traps or maybe laser fights?" Zara's smile widened. "No laser fights, no beasts. It's more metaphorical." Jack groaned. "So, basically, a bunch of people are going to talk at me until my brain explodes." "Well, not exactly," Zara said, her eyes twinkling, "but you will have to confront some truths." Jack sighed. "Yeah, truths, and I don't get along very well." The arena of understanding turned out to be a large, open amphitheater, surrounded by high crystalline walls that seemed to shimmer with the energy of countless thoughts. The air was still, almost too still, as though even the atmosphere was holding its breath. Jack, who had been expecting something grand and imposing, felt an odd sense of anticlimax as he stepped into the center of the arena. It was just a circular space, open and vast, with nothing but the faint hum of energy vibrating through the ground beneath him. "Welcome, Jack," a voice boomed suddenly, filling the space around him. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably present, as if it were coming from everywhere at once. The voice belonged to a tall figure that appeared in front of him out of nowhere, materializing from the very air itself. The figure had a face that was entirely composed of swirling blue and white patterns, its eyes like dark pools of light, devoid of features. Jack took a step back, suddenly uneasy. Is that you, Zara?" Zara's voice sounded in his ear, calm but amused. "No, Jack. This is the voice of the arena. It represents the collective knowledge of Lanthea. It will guide you through this test." Jack stared at the figure. "Right. So, no pressure then." The figure's voice didn't change, but it seemed to carry a deeper weight now. "You have come here because you are unsure of your promise. But what if the problem is not what you remember, but what you understand? In this space, you will face questions that challenge the very core of your being. If you wish to fulfill your bond with Zara, you must first confront yourself. Great, a self-help seminar, Jack muttered. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing, the voice responded, but your understanding. Well, that's reassuring, Jack replied, crossing his arms. I'm sure this will be great for my emotional development. Zara's voice was soft in his ear. You'll be fine, Jack. Just focus. Before Jack could respond, the arena shifted. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and from the fractures, a vision began to emerge. His own past played out like an old film reel. It was him, but younger, and he was standing in the middle of what appeared to be a vast, empty field, gazing up at a starry sky. Okay. That's me, Jack said, squinting at the image. But what's going on here? The voice of the arena spoke again. This is the moment when you made the promise to Zara. Jack frowned. I don't remember this at all. The image before him played on, showing him looking up at a brilliant star in the sky, a shimmer of purple light surrounding his body. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, a figure appeared beside him. A woman, her form glowing with a soft, ethereal light. Jack recognized her immediately. Wait, he breathed. That's Zara, but what is she doing there? The scene continued, showing the young Jack smiling, then suddenly kneeling in front of the glowing woman, Zara. The promise was made. He saw himself speak the words, but they were garbled, distant. The scene faded before he could hear them. The voice spoke again. You made a vow, Jack, one that was not meant to be forgotten. But you are not here to remember the words. You are here to understand the meaning behind them. Jack blinked. Okay, so I made a promise to... I don't even remember making it. What's the big deal? Zara's voice came again, this time less in his ear, more in his thoughts. It's not the words, Jack, it's the intention behind them. When you made the promise, you offered something of yourself, something pure. You saw me then as more than just an alien, more than just a different being. You saw me as someone. Jack stood frozen as the arena shifted again, this time showing him another memory. A memory of him laughing, carefree, in the middle of a group of friends, oblivious to the greater significance of his actions. The laughter faded, replaced by the steady pulse of something unfamiliar. It's about the connection. Zara's voice whispered through his thoughts. The promise was never just about me. It was about the bond between us. Jack swallowed, his throat dry. So, you're saying this was never about an alien marriage. It was about... understanding? Zara's voice was warm now, gentle. Yes. The bond goes beyond worlds, beyond species. It's about trust and understanding. It's about recognizing that we are not so different. The scene in the arena shifted once again, and this time, the figure of Zara appeared beside him, reaching out a hand. Do you understand now, Jack? Jack felt the weight of it all, the promises, the confusion, the questions, and for the first time since arriving on Lanthea, he felt something more than just fear or uncertainty. It was a flicker of something, hope perhaps, understanding. I think I do, Jack said slowly, his voice barely a whisper. The voice of the arena hummed, and the surrounding walls pulsed in response, as if acknowledging his answer. The vision of Zara faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the arena. Very well, the voice said. You have taken the first step, Jack, but there is more to come. The bond is not just a promise, it is a path, and it will test you further. Are you ready? Jack looked around the empty arena, his heart still racing, but now with a newfound sense of clarity. I guess I don't have much choice, do I? Zara's voice was soft, but full of warmth. Number. But you've already proven you can take the steps. Now, let's see how far you can go. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. Jack stood at the edge of the vast balcony, gazing out over the glowing city of Lanthea. The once foreign world now seemed oddly familiar, as if it had slowly become a part of him, like a new limb he hadn't known he needed. He had learned more in the past few weeks than he had in the previous few years of his life, about himself, about Zara, and about the kind of man he wanted to be. A soft hum from behind him made him turn, and there she was, Zara, her luminous form glowing softly in the dim light. She had always been a constant presence by his side, guiding him through the labyrinth of confusion and uncertainty. But now there was something different in her expression, a quiet pride, a hint of something deeper that Jack couldn't quite place. "You've come a long way," she said, her voice warm with the kind of familiarity that made Jack feel less like an alien in this world and more like someone who had truly belonged here all along. Jack chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, well, I never thought I'd end up in a place like this, fulfilling intergalactic marriage promises." Zara smiled, the light in her eyes flickering with something akin to amusement. "It wasn't just about the promise, Jack. It was about who you became along the way." He looked at her, genuinely curious. "Who I became, huh?" She nodded. "Yes. When you first came here, you were unsure, hesitant, almost dismissive of the connection between us. But over time, you've learned that promises, no matter how seemingly insignificant, can hold the weight of entire worlds. You've learned to understand not just your commitment, but why it mattered." Jack crossed his arms and turned back toward the horizon, watching as the lights of the city shimmered, reflecting the stars that had once been so distant and cold. "I guess I always thought of myself as the guy who just went with the flow. You know, make a promise, forget about it, move on. But I get it now. That promise, it wasn't just a piece of paper or some throwaway line. It was a bond. A real one." Zara took a step closer to him. "And that's why you're here. That's why you're ready to fulfill it." Jack shifted his gaze to her, his heart racing a little at the finality in her voice. "So, this is it, huh? No more tests? No more mind-bending alien arenas?" She shook her head, her hair flowing like liquid starlight in the low light. "No more tests, but it's not over. The path you've chosen with me, it doesn't end here. But that's what makes it worth it. The journey." There was a pause between them, as the weight of her words settled in. Jack had spent so much time running from the idea of responsibility, of commitment, that he hadn't truly realized the depth of what he'd been given. The opportunity to change the future, not just for himself, but for the very world he stood on. "So what happens now?" Jack asked. "I mean, I don't exactly have a book on how to marry an alien princess lying around." Zara laughed softly, the sound warm and inviting. "Don't worry, you'll figure it out, we'll figure it out, together." As the words hung between them, Jack found himself smiling. He didn't know exactly what the future would hold. Who could, really? But for the first time, he felt a sense of peace, of certainty that he hadn't known he was capable of. The night seemed to stretch out around them, the stars flickering like the distant memory of some forgotten promise. Jack's eyes lingered on the soft lights of the city below, a strange sense of belonging settling into his chest. "I can't believe this is my life now," he muttered, half to himself. Married to an alien, saving galaxies. Typical Tuesday stuff. Zara raised an eyebrow, amused. "I hope you're not trying to back out of it, Jack. I do have a rather impressive set of negotiation skills." Jack laughed, the tension of the past weeks finally lifting from his shoulders. "Oh no, I'm in it for the long haul. Besides, I'm pretty sure I'm not getting out of this without a few galactic consequences." Zara smiled knowingly. "Good. Because you're not supposed to." Jack's laughter faded as he turned to face her, the moment suddenly feeling more serious, more profound. "I don't know if I'm ever going to understand everything you told me about this bond, this promise. But what I do know is that I'm ready to give it a shot. I'm not perfect, Zara. I'm still me, the guy who forgot everything, the guy who thought commitments were just things to be tossed aside. But maybe I don't have to be that guy anymore." Zara's eyes softened, the glow in them deepening. You never had to be that guy. You were just waiting for the right moment to realize that. Jack swallowed, feeling the weight of her words press against his chest. He had changed. It wasn't just the promise he had made to her, or the tests he had faced in the arena, or even the alien politics that had threatened to overwhelm him. It was something else, a deeper understanding of what it meant to be connected to someone, to be responsible for something bigger than himself. "And you?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you feel about it? About us?" Zara stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm, her touch light but firm. "I feel at peace. I've always known that the path to this moment would not be easy, but I believed in it. I believed in you." Jack met her gaze, and for the first time since he'd stepped foot on Lenthea, he felt the certainty that he had truly arrived at the right place. The promise he had made, however distant and forgotten it had seemed, was no longer a vague memory. It was his reality now, something tangible and beautiful. "I guess I've always believed in you too," Jack said, his voice steady. Zara's smile deepened, and in that moment, everything fell into place. The tests, the challenges, the growing connection between them, it had all led to this. This moment, standing on the edge of a new life, together. With a soft sigh, Jack took her hand. "So, I guess it's official now. We're a thing, huh?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "It's been official since the moment you made the promise." Jack chuckled. "Right. Well, I guess it's time to start figuring out how to make this work. After all, we've got a galaxy to save." Zara smiled, and for a fleeting moment, the entire universe seemed to shine a little brighter. And in that moment, Jack realized he wasn't just a man with a forgotten promise anymore. He was a man with a future intertwined with Zara's and with the vast, incredible journey that awaited them both. "Together," he said softly. "Together," Zara replied. And as the stars shimmered above them, the promise, once forgotten, was finally fulfilled.